Good evening, welcome to Fonti International. I'm Alexandra Georgieva. Welcome to our show on Thursday and happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Let's have a look at the US markets. How are they trading this Thursday evening in Europe and morning in the US? Most of the US stock exchanges are trading in actually pretty mixed, but most of them in the red territory. Except S&P 500 that is currently up by 0.04%. Dow is negative by 0.02% and Nasdaq negative by 0.40%. Let's go to the FANGs. Most of the stocks are trading in the positive territory. Facebook is up by 0.33%. Apple as well by 0.41. Amazon is trading down by 0.38, but there is a very interesting news coming in the last seconds. Amazon said that it will not build a headquarters in New York following mounting opposition. The company said in a statement Thursday, Amazon said it doesn't have plans to reopen the research for a replacement location. The company will continue to build its planned headquarters in Virginia and its other planned location in Nashville. That's very interesting. Here is the statement. While polls show that 70% of New Yorkers support our plans and investment, a number of state and local politicians have made it clear that they oppose our presence and will not work with us to build the type of relationship that are required to go forward with the project we and many others envisioned. In Long Island City, Amazon said in a statement, the company said it will continue to grow in the teams it already has in Staten Island, Brooklyn and Manhattan. Very interesting news. I think personally extreme loss for New York, for the city of New York. Let's go ahead with the other FANGs. Netflix is positive by 1.28, Google is up by 0.55, Snap is up by 1.43. Regarding the old tech, Microsoft is currently up by 0.23%. Going to the banking sector, it seems that it's in the color of the love or the red, because the major banks are in the red currently. JP Morgan is down by 0.30. It had a very interesting news today. It's going to have its own currency, but we're going to talk about this in the second part of our show. But JP Morgan is going to have its own cryptocurrency. Very interesting news, because it was against the cryptocurrency only 1 year ago. Bank of America is down by 0.52 and Goldman is down by 0.74%. Morgan Stanley as well down by 0.29. Let's go to the energy stocks. They are pretty mixed, as we can see. ExxonMobil is up by 0.13, Chevron is down by 0.19, Duke is down by 1.41. And moving to the automotive sector, Tesla is down by 1.11, Daimler negative 1.62, Ford is up by 0.48 and FCA is down by 1.39. Coca-Cola is trading, literally sinking right now. It's down by 7.53% after it reported worse than expected earnings data. I would like to go together with you through the European stock exchanges. Let's have a look at their performance. Not really beautiful day for the European stock exchanges. They mostly closed in the red territory, with the stock 600 closed down by 0.32, with all the major bourses, as I said, in the red except the FTSE 100. Let's go through them one by one. DAX is down by 0.69. FTSE 100, as I said, is the only one up by 0.09, Kakaran down 0.23 and FTSE MIB down 0.78%. On the other side, there are some earnings data coming from Europe, but we are gonna be back on that only in few seconds, because we have to speak for many stuff tonight. We're gonna start with Airbus. Airbus is scraping production of its iconic A380, the biggest civilian aircraft to ever sail the sky. The decision was made after Fly Emirates, the largest A380 customer, decided to reduce its orders for the Super Jumbo. Emirates called off a 36 units order of A380, asking instead for 70 of the smaller A350 and A330 Neo. When the Airbus program was launched in 2007, the company was aiming at selling 1,300 aircrafts by 2037, but the super jumbo airplane comes with a staggering price tag, 443 million euros, an expense few aircraft carrier can afford. In addition, not every major airport in the world is equipped to welcome the flying monster. Tom Enders, CEO of Airbus, said the firm is continuing to spend millions to prepare for the effect of Britain's exit from the European Union. Every wing on Airbus commercial aircraft is designed and manufactured in the UK. The wider firm generates 6 billion of turnover in the UK and has more than 14,000 employees. Following the news, Airbus stock has been widely bought on the Paris exchange. I would like to show you the stock, if we can find it in our schedule. Yes, here it is. It closed up by 2.86% in the very positive territory. We had lots of earnings data for Europe, but first I would like to see with you the Asian markets, how they closed today. Not really positive trading session for the Asian markets, because Shanghai Composite closed down by 0.05%, Kospi closed positive 1.11, Hang Seng down by 0.23, and the Japanese Nikkei closed down by 0.02%, despite the fact that President Donald Trump is considering pushing back the deadline for the imposition of higher tariffs on Chinese imports by 60 days. Trump had threatened China to impose further 200 billion tariffs on Beijing imported goods on the 1st of March. However, given the willingness of Chinese authorities to come to an agreement, Trump is contemplating postponing the deadline to the 1st of May. Meanwhile, today, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin met in Beijing with Liu He, Chinese Vice Prime Minister. The U.S. authorities discussed with the Chinese counterparts a possible way to hammer out a deal. Mnuchin and Lighthizer have stated time and again that not only China has to reduce its trade surplus towards the U.S., but it must stop the theft of U.S. intellectual property. These are the images from the today meetings. The U.S. are also devising an automatic mechanism that would punish China if it failed to comply with the new trade arrangement. According to the Chinese newspaper South China Post, President Xi Jinping in person could meet Steven Mnuchin tomorrow. If the encounter was positive, Xi could then sign a bilateral agreement with Trump in the coming months. This is about the trade deal. As we can see, talks are going ahead. Despite this fact, as we can see, Asia and Europe closed in the negative territory, and on the other side, America is still trading mostly in the red. Actually, right now, all the stocks are, all the indexes are in the red territory. I would like to welcome Jean Ergas, Chief Economist at Tigers Financial Partners. Good evening, Jean, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Alexandra. Always a pleasure.
Well, I would like to get back to Europe now because we had quite a lot of earnings data, especially from the banking sector. I've just mentioned Airbus seconds ago, but I would like to start with the banking sector because I would love to have analysis with you and hear your valuation, your assessment of the European banking sector that, as we all know, suffered a lot in the last years. So I would like to start with Commerzbank. Germany's second biggest lender, Commerzbank, has reported sharply improved results. Skimming through the company's balance sheet for the entire 2018, revenue increased by 5% at 8 billion and 600 million. This is our billboard. You can have a look at it. Operating profits have grown by 8.3% at 1 billion and 245 million euros. Full year profits have jumped 575% to 865 million euros. Capital strength, the common equity tier 1 indicator was at 12.9% in line with other major European banks. The German lender would further reduce costs this year and next and is targeting a 3% growth in revenue year. Net profit attributable to shareholders of 113 million euros was above the 75.7 million euros expected by analysts. To go ahead with Credit Suisse, it recorded first profit 2014. The bank reported a full year net profit of 2.1 billion Swiss francs. The Swiss lender reported a net loss of 983 million Swiss francs in 2017. For its fourth quarter, the company reported a net income of 292 million Swiss francs. Analysts were expecting a net income of 224.63 million francs. Going to the number, CET1 ratio 2018 is at 12.6% versus 13.5% in 2017. And the net profit for 2018, I repeat, is 2.1 billion francs. And the last one is the French major bank, one of the French major banks, which is Crédit Agricole. The bank said its fourth quarter net profit more than doubled to 1 billion euros, up from 387 million euros in the same period year earlier, when the bank had to book almost 400 million in charges related to exceptional taxes. Analysts pulled by Infront data expected 795 million profit during the quarter. Crédit Agricole said it surpassed targets set 3 years ago for 2019 on profitability and revenue growth. The bank's revenue grew by an average 4.3% a year in 2016-2018. While return on tangible equity rose to 12.7%. So, Jean, this is the data. As we can see, most of the banks that reported data today reported positive data and higher than expected. But here is the thing to point out, that actually the expectations were not so high. So probably it's not so exceptional that they reported higher than expected data. What is your general assessment after this data?
Well, look, I think I can only give you really a general assessment of how I see the banking sector in Europe. As you know, be very careful because I'm licensed in the United States on recommendation and disrecommendation, so it's not going to do. But the real point is the general sector. The general sector in Europe is a sector which has suffered a lot for different reasons. It has gone through a very tough time because of the recession. It's also gone through a tough time and all the crises there were. It's also gone through a tough time because the banks were overstaffed and inefficient. So I think that what we're seeing now is, yes, a slight overall in the banking sector, a slightly better performance. But the real point is that a lot of the banks in Europe remain full of very bad loans. There's about 1 trillion of them still out there, spread out. They remain undercapitalized and not yet caught up with the latest requirements. They are facing, I think, another round of slow growth in the very near future, which will increase the bad loan element. That said, let us remember that there are other activities within the banking world and that some of these may do better than others. But I still see European banking as a sector which at best can be seen as macroeconomically recovering, but we will take a very long time for any of the banks to regain the prestige they had before. Let us remember that the banking crisis was an integral part in the second half of, let's put it this way, the 2010s, 2011, 2012 in Europe. Many banks had to have help from governments. I'm not referring specifically to any country, but it was fairly generalized. And then what we're seeing now is years and years of recovery work of a sector which in many countries is still not contributing fully to the economic expansion.
Well, very interesting. What I can catch from your talks is that you are positive on the European banking sector. So do you expect higher profits in the upcoming quarters?
Well, look, I cannot say that I'm really positive. What I do see is that a lot of efforts have been made. Hopefully, the efforts that have been made will put them in a better position to weather any downturn in the cycle, which I think is on its way. So I think it's a very important point. Hopefully, we are not going back to 2011, 2010, 2012, when banks were, from the macro point of view, a severe hindrance. Because why? They were obviously, first, their share prices were collapsing, causing massive loss of wealth for institutional investors and private investors. Two, they were not able to break the sovereign banking loop, which meant that as the country in which they were incorporated lost in credit strength, they had increasing difficulties funding, which meant they had increasing recourse to the European Central Bank. So the banks at that point, let us be very frank, were a hindrance or a weight on any recovery incipient as it might have been in the corporate sector. What I see now is possibly efforts to improve their position. It's still far from ideal. I think we're still going to be seeing mergers. We're still going to be seeing government-backed rescues. And this is a process of consolidation which will take a considerable amount of time.
You've just mentioned we're going to see more mergers. So talking about mergers, I would like to focus then on Commerzbank data. It was better than expected, as I said a few seconds ago. But do you think there is we all know that they are those scoops coming from Bloomberg that Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank are supposed to merge before the European Parliament elections, which is very weird because the German Prime Minister declined those statements. But here is my question. Do you believe that there is a point to merge two banks, two major banks that are not performing really well?
Look, I mean, the question is basically this, and I think all I can do at this point really is refer back to the U.S. What was the banking crisis in the U.S. about? Was it a choice in terms of solutions between the good and the bad? No, it was a choice between the bad and the worse. And I think the bad and the worse is the key choice which has faced the banking system since the great crisis of 2008, 2009. So I think what governments try to do, because these are governments acting as investment bankers. In fact, ironically, these are the governments saving the investment bankers who should have been themselves expert at devising mergers or business combinations within the limits of antitrust laws, which would have provided a further capital and necessary underpinning. So what the bank states governments are trying to do is say, A, let us bring together, like they did in the U.S., in a generic sense, different institutions of different financial strength. Let us see to what extent they complement each other. Let us see to what extent the capital structure of one can help the other. And then let us proceed from there to massive cost cutting and rationalization to do what? To actually arrive at a lower cost base plus a greater capital strength through hopefully the merger and hopefully diversified business streams, which will allow them to weather the business cycle better. I think what we're really still at is a very early stage where we have come through, in certain cases, the most difficult part, and now we're starting to see, okay, how can we actually make this sector, once again, a vibrant sector of the economy, a support and not a weight?
Well, very interesting, Jean. I would like to focus your attention instead on the U.S. again, because there is some data also coming from U.S. The retail sales fell 1.2%, the biggest monthly drop since September 2009, which retail sales fell 0.9% in December when excluding gasoline station sales. What do you think about that?
Look, I am not surprised, okay? I really am not surprised. We do not see the U.S. economy as firing on all cylinders, as they say here. We see a U.S. economy which has maintained, up to now, a respectable pace of growth, faster than the Eurozone. So in terms of relative performance, it's still doing, I think, reasonably well. But in absolute terms, I don't believe it's anything too much. The problem is basically this. The U.S. consumer lives on credit. The U.S. consumer is largely composed of people who cannot find $500 in an emergency. Therefore, cash is low. Once they have tapped out their credit lines, purchasing power is limited. Wage increases have, yes, maybe picked up, but in terms of number of years elapsed since crisis, wage increases have been very low. So I don't think we can really ask for too much from the U.S. consumer. I believe that the U.S. economy will post some sharply lower numbers than expected in the coming months, I am not saying the U.S. economy is going to go into recession, because as you know, you do not predict recessions, you suddenly are in one. They are very sudden. But I do believe that the U.S. consumer is under pressure at this point. We are seeing very little pricing power in industry. We are seeing already producer price indices which are falling. This was very interesting data today, which to my mind means not only just energy, but that producers of inputs cannot put through price increases. So if you cannot put through a price increase, what does that mean? It means that the consumer is not in a position to pay higher prices. So I think I'm not surprised at all. I think that we're going to be seeing much softer data than people expected. I am not surprised in the least.
Well, on the other side, how much of an impact do you believe that this data is going to have on the markets? Because as I can see, or as we can see actually, they were trading pretty positive in the last 3 days. And all of a sudden today we have kind of decline, which is not huge decline, but still decline, since they are currently all in the red territory.
Look, I don't think, that this is going to have as much of an impact right now as, for example, the trade negotiations. We have to line up what the different factors are. Okay, I think right now people are very keen on what is going to happen between the U.S. and China. That's the number one thing. But obviously, if we start seeing a pattern here of softer data, it may well convince some people that Fortress America, which appeared to be impregnable, which appeared to be non-attackable, is slowly starting to wilt, not wilt, but slowly starting to slow in terms of growth. And this could certainly have an impact on certain sectors. I think what's really important right now is the trade framework. It's extremely important. And what I find interesting in the retail sales is, yes, you strip out the gasoline. You look, obviously, gasoline prices came down. That is true. But if gasoline prices came down, that should have been a hidden subsidy to people to be able to buy more. But in fact, this did not happen. So I think that's very interesting indeed, which means that they are tapped out, that they cannot take advantage of the oil dividend, even brief as it was. Oil is still at relatively low rates compared to 4 or 5 years ago, but we have not seen the surge that many expected. So I think it's going to be a factor. I don't know if it's going to, on its own right now, be the factor, but we have to see a series here, and I think we may see some softer data going forward.
Well, talking about the trade talks, it looks like they are going pretty well, because also Trump said he may extend time till May. So are you bullish on it?
Look, I am neither here nor there, not on one side nor another on the trade talks, for an extremely simple reason, that we are not dealing with a situation in which consensus is built bottom up. Let us be very clear. We, the United States, are dealing with a country which has an authoritarian leadership which can simply overrule anything that any previous negotiator under the level of the president have agreed. So nothing is agreed until this summit takes place. Let us be very clear on this. I believe that there will be a lot of resistance on the real reforms, which are going to be the structural reforms concerning the subsidies to the government entities, going to be the intellectual property, the technology transfer, which creates cycle rather than follow it. And I also believe that at the best, what we will see will be a vague undertaking on the part of China to purchase more commodities, for example, from the U.S. In any case, this does not mean that the U.S. will, A, be able to retain its leadership in certain technology-driven sectors, or B, that this will ensure faster U.S. growth. Remember, we can have balanced trade between two countries. It does not mean that both countries are exploding with vitality. Balanced trade per se does not bring economic stimulus or expansion.
Thank you very much, Jan Ergas, Chief Economist at Tigers Financial Partners. Thank you very much for joining us tonight in this special evening, and thank you very much for your analysis. We do appreciate it. Have a good evening, Jan.
Hello.
Just a second before we go into a commercial break, I would like to read again for you the earnings data we had from Europe, and it's very important news that Airbus is scraping production of iconic A380 Airbus is scrapping the production to the biggest civilian aircraft to ever sail the sky. Emirates called of 36 units order of A318, asking instead of for 70 of the smaller A350 and A330 Neo. So that was because of this was the decision after Fly Emirates, the largest actually A380 customer, decided to reduce its orders for the super jumbo. On the other side, the CEO Tom Enders said the firm is continuing to spend millions to prepare for the effect of Britain's exit from the European Union. Every wing on Airbus commercial aircraft is designed and manufactured in the UK. The wider firm generates £6 billion, which is equal to $7.7 billion of turnover in the UK and has more than 14,000 employees. Following the news, of course, the shares of Airbus soared. It closed more than 2.5% in the positive territory. Another very important earnings data coming from Europe is Commerzbank, which is the second largest German bank, and we know that there are so many scoops around the bank, but despite this, skimming through the company's balance sheet for the entire 2018, revenues increased by 5% at 8 billion and 600 millions. Operating profits have grown by 8.3% at 1 billion and 1.2 billion. Full year profits have jumped to 865 million euros, up by 575%. Capital strength, the common equity tier indicator was at 12.9%, in line with other major European banks. So as we can see, the German lender would further reduce costs this year and next, and is targeting 3% growth in revenue a year. As you can see, pretty positive data actually for Commerzbank, but also we have to conclude that the expectations were not so high. Going ahead, we have also Credit Suisse, very important Swiss bank. It also reported record first profit since 2014. The bank reported full year net profit of 2.1 billion Swiss francs. The Swiss lender reported also net loss of 983 million Swiss francs in 2017. Going through the numbers, CET1 ratio 2018 is at 12.6% versus 13.5% in 2017. Net loss for 2018 is at 983 million Swiss francs, and net income fourth quarter is 292 million francs versus 224.63 million francs of expectations. And net profit 2018, as I said before, is 2.1 billion Swiss francs. And the last one, very important as well, is the French giant, which is Crédit Agricole. I'm going to go fast through the numbers. It has 1 billion euros of, it doubled actually its fourth quarter profit. Compared to the same period of the last year, it's up from 387 million euros when the bank had to book almost 400 million in charges related to exceptional taxes. So as we can see, at the end, the banks did not perform so bad, and they all reported earnings data higher than expected. We are going for a short commercial break, and in the second part we are going to focus on the energy stocks. You don't want to miss that.
Ben ritrovati in diretta dalle Fonti TV Forex Time.
L'analisi dei principali cambi valutari. Quali i movers della settimana in grado di influenzare euro, dollaro, sterlina, yen, cripto? Con Alex Soldati e le vostre domande da casa ai migliori analisti e operatori del settore. Forex News, da lunedì a venerdì alle 15 solo sulle Fonti TV.
La trading league è un po' come spiare in senso buono cosa fa un trader bravo. Partecipano infatti i migliori con qualche esordiente, in una competizione che dura 5 giorni ed è divisa in 2 manche per determinare il vincitore, che deve essere bravo in tutto, intraday e multiday. Le performance le certifica diretta. Vince chi fa più punti, ma tu puoi guardare anche chi ha fatto più soldi in valore assoluto, oppure chi ha fatto la miglior percentuale. Puoi vedere eseguiti, statistiche e mettere i like ai tuoi preferiti. Seguirle è gratuito, basta iscriversi. Ti aspetto e se sei bravo vieni a sfidarci.
Edizione straordinaria.
L'azione sta facendo impazzire il mondo
Non
del
si
trading.
conoscono ancora
E dietro tutto questo c'è l'Investing Napoli.
sta creando panico in tutto il paese.
Mamma, tieniti libera venerdì 29 marzo. Mi chiamo Tokyo, ma prima di questa storia non mi chiamavo così.
Ti piacerebbe vedere all'opera persone che guadagnano milioni sui mercati?
Salve, ispettore, con chi parlo?
Con il capo di questo evento. Cos'è questa? È carta, è solo carta. Non è niente, lo vedi?
È troppo tranquillo per essere uno squilibrato.
Good evening, welcome back to our show. This is Fonti International and I'm Alexandra Georgieva. Welcome to our show on Thursday, 14th of February, and happy Valentine's for everyone that is just switching on his TV. I would like to go to the US markets. Let's have a look how are the major indexes performing. As we can see, they are all in the color of the love, the red. S&P 500 is up by 0.01, Dow is up, is down by 0.03%, and Nasdaq is negative by 0.67%. Going to the sectors, they are mostly in the red and not really positive trading session, as we've seen also very negative trading session for Asia after 3 days of rally and after great performance of the Chinese stock exchanges. Also Europe closed down mostly in the red except the FTSE 100. And as we can see, the FANGs are not really performing pretty well. Most of them are slightly above the positive, the neutral territory. Let's have a look at the energy stocks, because we're gonna focus on the energy stocks in the second part of our show. Exxon is up by 0.20, Chevron is negative by 0.32, and Duke is down by 1.48%. I would like to go and have a look at the oil prices. WTI is currently trading at $54.34 per barrel, up by 0.72, and Brent on the other side is $64.30 per barrel. But before we go ahead, I will really have the pleasure to welcome Youssef Al-Shamari, Editor-in-Chief of Usurgy Insight. Good evening, Youssef, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Alexandra. Pleasure to be with you.
Happy Valentine's, Youssef.
Happy Valentine's to you as well, and hopefully to the market.
I hope too. I would like to start from Saudi Aramco. It's a very important news coming yesterday from the Financial Times. I would like to repeat it for our audience. The Saudi state energy giant Aramco aims to expand into international oil and gas exploration in the coming years. a move that will see the company compete more directly with the likes of Exxon and Royal Dutch Shell, and not only with the major stocks. We are no longer going to be inward looking and focused only on monetizing the kingdom's resources. Falik told the FT, going forward, the world is going to be Saudi Aramco's playground. This is very interesting decision, because the company has considered making investment in liquefied natural gas projects in the Russian Arctic and the US. According to recent news reports, Falik says Aramco is also considering opportunities in Australia, which recently topped Qatar as the world's top exporter of LNG, a form of natural gas chilled to liquid from transport by sea. So here is my question, Youssef. Why is, in your opinion, this very interesting switch in company policy? I say switch because only 1 year ago I was working materials of Falik, and he was saying that actually they want to be a green champion, the renewable energy champion, and all of a sudden they completely changed their company policy. Why is this, in your opinion?
I think it's a very interesting statement. It's quite surprising for Saudi Aramco to be planning to be an international oil company. But if you look into the motives that the minister has mentioned, is because already there is a Saudi plan to have an initial public offering for Saudi Aramco at the international stock markets. And if you combine then now the two factors, well, having Aramco as an IOC with an IPO, it makes sense, because international investors would want to invest in a company that is globally with a global presence. And that's from the business perspective. From the other perspectives, including technologies, including resources, having Aramco as an IOC would certainly help Saudi Aramco to develop technologies that would enable it to compete with the global firms. Currently, Saudi Aramco is the main strength is by the resources. But when it comes to technologies, for example, you would have BP, you would have Exxon. They have certain technologies that are very, very well developed in the West. So if Saudi Aramco, certainly, when it expands as an IOC, it would enable it to build technologies that would enable it to compete with global oil majors. So that's one target. The other target is by exploring for natural gas. As you can see, because Saudi Aramco has got enormous resources of oil, so expanding overseas would enable it to also maximize its natural gas resources. So these are the main three reasons that would drive the willingness of Saudi Arabia to have Saudi Aramco as an IOC. From my own perspective, I don't think the green direction is over. I think in addition to that, having Saudi Aramco as an IOC, a green investment would be a part of the investment portfolios of the company. For example, you have BP as an IOC, and it invests heavily in electric charging vehicles. So I think having Saudi Aramco as an IOC is not a shift from a green investment. I think it would be a part of it.
Well, certainly we are going to follow this development because it's extremely interesting. It may be Saudi Aramco may be potentially the most expensive public company if it would decide to list. Do you believe it's going to list in the stock exchange?
According to the statements of Saudi Aramco CEO in the last Davos meeting, it seems that yes, the Saudi government is ahead with its plan, and it's planned to take place in early after 2020, around 2021, or towards the 2022. So all the plan seems to be going ahead, and I think I think yes, it will be listed on the global stock exchange. But of course, for any plan to happen, of course, there needs to be a criteria, and I'm sure there are certain criteria that the kingdom and the company, they want to achieve before having a final decision on where to list it and how to list it, and also the final date. But so far, it seems that, yes, they are going ahead with the plan.
Well, in this case, it's extremely difficult to compete with Saudi Aramco. What do you think is going to happen in terms of competition? For example, Exxon, British Petroleum, Eni, Duke, Chevron, they are all going to be in a difficulty, in your opinion. What is going to happen to the stocks?
Well, I don't think it's about competition here, listing Saudi Aramco to compete with oil majors in terms of the stocks. It's because the size of Saudi Aramco is quite huge, even than even global firms, including Apple and Google, which is the largest publicly traded firms in the world, not just IOCs. Because if you look into the resources of Saudi Aramco, it's very huge compared even to a normal IOC. So I don't think it's about competition in here in terms of listing, but it's about having Saudi Aramco as a globally competitive company in terms of its profile, in terms of its operations, in terms of course, the competition could happen if Saudi Aramco gets transferred as an IOC. And why competition will happen if when there are certain projects of oil exploration and production, then oil companies would compete to have the best offering in terms of where they explore oil and extract it using the best technologies, the greenest and the lowest carbon. And these are the competition happens. But in terms of the stock exchange, I don't see this is the main reason.
Well, let's move to the oil prices. Let's have a look for a second. The WTI is currently trading at $54.36 per barrel and Brent is at $64.36 per barrel, up by 1.10% right now. You've always been very positive in terms of oil prices. You always said you expect higher prices and everything, but we actually do see higher prices in the last days, but didn't you expect a little bit more from the prices after 1 month, I think?
Kind of. The prices have been rising, but not on a very fast, not at a very fast speed. Major reasons because you have a high growth in production from the United States. You have a slight buildup of stocks. However, on the other side, you have a declining of production coming from OPEC. That's the voluntary. You have involuntary decline production from Venezuela that could decline by 300,000 barrels a day in the next month. So, however, there has been like a sharp increase in the last couple of days after the Saudi oil minister announced the deeper cuts coming from Saudi Arabia to below 10 million barrels a day. That really has pushed the oil prices a bit higher, above $63 a barrel for Brent, and now going towards the above $54 for the WTI. So I think this is how the market is being reacted. Of course, also you have other factors, including there is now a greater optimism for the U.S. trade China deal, and President Trump has extended the deadline until the 1st of March, and it seems that there will be a conciliation in terms of the trade deal between the United States and China, and that's what makes oil traders more optimistic about the healthy demand of oil, combined with cuts coming from OPEC. So these are, I think, the main reasons why oil prices, you see them currently rising, but not at a very fast speed, I think because of there is some production increase from the United States.
Well, this is true. I agree with you. On the other side, many strategists argue that the fair price is between $60-70 per barrel. Here's the thing. Do you believe it's feasible, this price? And another thing that I really would like to ask you that is very important for our viewers is that with those prices, with currently those oil prices at $54 per barrel, do you think the major American companies can make actually higher profits? Because we've seen last week the earnings season, they were good profits. Yeah, sure, we cannot describe them as negative, but do you expect higher profits or lower profits if eventually prices do not go higher?
From American producers.
I mean, for the oil majors in general, also let's say British Petroleum and so on. Actually, it's reported very positive data. I don't want to say anything negative about the BP, but in general, they stated that if prices are not going higher in general, what is going to happen to these stocks? I mean, at the end, I don't think it's very, how can I say, profitable to trade at the current prices.
Certainly, increasing oil prices will help any oil companies. However, the stocks of oil companies are not always dependent on the oil price. For example, you see BP has performed better than expected at low oil prices in the fourth quarter of 2018, right, despite the decline by about 40% in oil price. But why is that? Because of increased efficiency in the operations, increased production, divestment of low profitability projects. So efficiency always can make can increase, in fact, prices even at lower, even if the product of the company is being sold at a lower price. So certainly, but on the other hand, an increase in oil prices will certainly be a very good incentive for the company to maximize its profits, and consequently its stocks may increase. So I would think if the oil prices keeps increasing, the profits of these companies will certainly increase. However, it will not only, their performance will not only be judged by the oil prices. There will be other things that you have to take into consideration in order to judge the performance and the stock of oil companies. They have been very resilient and less dependent on oil prices in the last years.
Right, and as I said before, many strategists and analysts are seeing the prices between $60 and $70 per barrel. When do you see these prices to be? 60 and 70. Yeah, like the WTI in the range between 60 and 70.
Well, that is a very high. If I could say WTI would be on this day on 60, that's $1 million question.
Yeah, right? No, but okay, let me ask you in another way. Do you expect this to happen till the end of 2019?
Well, nothing is impossible. We could see it.
Very strategic answer.
If declining production keeps declining, demand keeps rising, we can see the WTI reaching 60. Yes. However, because we don't know, there's uncertainty what OPEC will do, and they have a meeting coming up in April, another meeting to decide in June if they will extend the cuts or not. So I cannot say what the price will be towards the end of 2019 before we see what OPEC will do in April and June. However, between now and April, towards, let's say, in the first half of 2019, I don't think prices will reach 60 that fast. It needs some time. But if OPEC continues with deeper cuts, and there's healthy demands rising, then possibly prices could reach 60 for WTI.
Well, thank you very much, Youssef Al-Shamari, editor-in-chief at Usurgy Insight. It was a great pleasure to have you here.
Always my great pleasure to be with you.
Have a good evening, Youssef.
You too.
Well, let's have a look once again at the US market, since they are currently the only one open for a trading session. As we can see, let's say unfortunately, they are all in the color of the law of the red. S&P 500 is down by 0.04%, Dow is negative by 0.08%, and Nasdaq is kind of sinking today, is down by 0.58% after 3 days of a very positive trading session. There is something very interesting regarding JP Morgan, so I would like to move to the banking sector. As we can see, all the stocks are in the red. JP Morgan is down by 0.51, Bank of America Merrill Lynch is down by 0.64, Goldman is down by 0.83, and Morgan Stanley negative by 0.49%. But here is the thing, the JP Morgan is launching its own cryptocurrency. This is the story of the day regarding the banking sector. The lender moves more than $6 trillion around the world every day for corporation in its massive wholesale payments business. In trials set to start in a few months, a tiny fraction of that will happen over something called JPM coin, the digital token created by engineers at the New York-based bank to instantly settle payments between clients. Each JPM coin is redeemable for a single US dollar. It shares the qualities of a stable coin. Clients will be issued the coins after depositing dollars at the bank after using the tokens of a payment or security purchase on the blockchain. The bank destroys the coins and gives clients back a commensurate number of dollars. As we can see, extremely interesting. Also, JP Morgan is going to go to the blockchain system, which is very interesting. Bitcoin prices, actually, I would like to remind, let's have a look at the Bitcoin prices. It's currently at $3,574, so it's still not really trading in the very positive territory. Well, this was everything from us for this evening. Thank you for having watched us, and see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. on Fonti TV, and happy Valentine's Day!